I want to talk about the breaking news we had overnight of Hamas, who says its leader, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed while staying in Tehran. He was killed in an airstrike about 2 o'clock local time, reports say. And the group blames Israel for the attack. Israel, as I understand, not yet responded, but they previously vowed to eliminate Hamas's leader. It comes hours after Israel said it killed a senior Hezbollah commander in a strike in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. And the attacks on 2 senior Iran-backed militant leaders in the space of 24 hours has raised fears of further regional conflict. One of my big concerns is, apart from being very high up in Hamas, he was also one of the leaders in terms of negotiating a ceasefire. And whilst we're obliged in the UK to say that Hamas is a proscribed terrorist group, not just in the UK, but various other places around the world, he was one of the instrumental people in negotiating what hopefully was going to be a peace deal. What's your take on all of this, George?
Well, I think you summed it up very well. I mean, he was one of the key figures in the so-called peace ceasefire negotiations that the Biden administration claimed that he was brokering, and that it had claimed it was already almost done. We're in the last 10-yard line. And it's very hard to see how these negotiations can continue if one of the key figures within the negotiation has been assassinated. And then, you have to assume that that was the objective. And, to be honest, it was always very unlikely that these ceasefire negotiations would succeed, for the obvious reason that Israel had no interest in signing any kind of ceasefire. And then it was always dishonest on the part of the Biden administration to claim, oh, we're almost there, everybody's on the same page, when over and over again, Netanyahu said that there's going to be no ceasefire until we've achieved our wartime objectives, which is the complete destruction of Hamas. Well, that means you intend complete victory, and therefore you're not interested in any kind of ceasefire. So that obviously is, I think it's not going to be, no more negotiations, at least for quite a while. But the other issue, and this is something we're going to talk about, is this is a big failure for Iran. And I think, that's something that we're going to have to really address, that this is a major humiliation of Iran, and not the first over the recent times. And Iran's going to have to step up and do something, because it's really being shown to be rather a paper tiger.
Yeah, and he lived, basically, he was from Gaza. He lived in Qatar for several years, and he was in Tehran, I understand, for the inauguration of Iran's president. Martin?
Yeah, I'm saddened by these events. I think there's a multitude of messages to unravel there. I think George probably hit the nail on the head when he talked about Iran and Iran's vulnerability. A lot of analysts in the region are talking about this online now and saying that this on its own, just detaching yourself from the implications of the peace talks, just the fact that the Israelis can carry out a strike like that within Iran really does highlight Iran's vulnerability. And politically, internally, the dynamic is now weaker than it ever was. And the Iranians will have to do something about that. They will have to step up to the mark and improve their security internally, and also make a bold statement to the Israelis in return. And so, Haniyeh, I hope I've pronounced his name right, he did live in Gaza. He's an interesting character. He lost 3 of his 4 sons and about 20 family members in the Gaza bombing. And I think for him to be removed now from the equation sends more than one message. First of all, clearly Israel is not even remotely serious about any sort of peace talks. Hot on the heels of Netanyahu coming from Washington, where he was told by Joe Biden, wrap it up now. He clearly isn't, because once that ends, I think that if there is a ceasefire of any sort, he fears that that's the end of his political virility, that he will actually be, he can only stay in office as he keeps this war going, and he believes that's his political right, if you like. But I think, secondly, you have to look at a strike like that and interpret it from a geomilitary perspective. In many respects, Israel is not doing very well against Hezbollah with this constant exchange of ordnance over the Israeli border on a daily basis. Hezbollah has had a number of key strikes in the last few weeks, which have really, I think, struck at the heart of Israel's vulnerability, militarily speaking. But Israel, if the rumors are to be believed, in the last few days, from what I'm hearing from people in Lebanon, there is going to be an imminent war of some sort, and Israel has ambitions of going up to the Litani River again, as it did in 2000, and occupying all that huge swathe of land in the south. It's going to be a different story this time than 2000 or even 82, because Hezbollah is now much bigger, more powerful, has a lot more sophisticated equipment. And its plan now, which is the worst kept secret in the Middle East, Hezbollah's plan, if that were to happen, is to, within a matter of hours, take a huge swathe of land on Israel's side as well. And one has to wonder what this strike is really saying. Is it a message to Iran that we have this sophisticated kind of weaponry that you don't have? We can actually send a bomb from thousands of miles away to hit somebody's living room within an apartment block. Hezbollah's weaponry is very sophisticated indeed, much, much more than it was in 2006. But I'm not sure they've got exactly that kind of match. We may well see in the next few days, but I would say they haven't. And I think it's a message from the Israelis. Look, if you think you advance, if you think you can advance on the battlefield of southern Lebanon or Israel, we will always be able to take out your leaders. So think again. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation, which I'm more leaning towards, is that I think we're also getting very close to an intervention, a Western intervention, which would halt this war, because things are getting really out of hand. And usually what happens in the Middle East is when both sides are about to agree to suspend fighting for talks to begin, usually they like to get a few last shots in, because that builds up their trove of what they can negotiate with. It may well be that Israel is planning some sort of ceasefire brokered by the Americans, and they wanted to get a couple of points over. And this is a very good way of doing it. But to hit Israel, to hit Hezbollah, to hit all of its enemies in one go and really come out of it on top, I think it was a very effective blow. Israel will be very happy with it. The other thing that Israel will be countering on, and I would assume that this was part of the strike, part of their thinking, is that to take out somebody so senior within Iran guarantees a massive retaliation, a huge retaliation on Iran's part. May not be in the next few days, may well be in the next few weeks, because Iran and Hezbollah both serve the dish of revenge very coldly. They don't react very, very quickly. It's not a passionate attitude. But I think part of the ploy to bring in America, to drag America into a regional war, Netanyahu will figure that he could easily lose 100 or 200 Israeli citizens in a city in Israel by an Iranian strike, which would then justify a full-out international war with America helping Israelis. He'll write that off. He would happily do that. We've seen how he happily kills his own people during October 7th, where the IDF just slaughtered a number of Israelis, and so I think that we should also factor that into it. We could be looking at a strategic planned retaliation, which Netanyahu will want to capitalize on.
Yeah, and you make some very interesting points there. As you say, Netanyahu, I always remind of that movie Wag the Dog, the 1997, where a war was started, albeit it was started in a production studio, to basically distract people from problems at home. And Netanyahu's got quite a few problems at home, and bribery charges and so on and so forth. But you do make an interesting point that this might be the last thing before a deal is done, and if that's sort of following the patterns of history. Let me just get your thoughts on that, George, before the break.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's an interesting theory, but if the United States at the moment is entirely bogged down with the election. It just isn't focusing on international affairs. Biden is a lame duck president. He really doesn't have the authority to engage in any serious diplomacy, whether it's in Ukraine or whether it's in Israel. So I would have doubts whether that's going on. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think that's the case. The other thing is that Iran, has this, it's for over the past few years. I mean, it's sat back, allowed its nuclear scientists to be assassinated one after another. It then, General Soleimani, its national hero, was assassinated. The Americans kindly, very generously said, okay, we will allow you to give us a token response. No one gets hurt. Not a single American is going to get killed. But at least you'll be able to feel good about yourself that you were allowed a token response and we didn't retaliate. And then something similar happened after the assassination of its commanders in the Israeli attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Iran retaliated, but it gave advance warning. The Americans, the British, the Jordanians all made sure that none of their missiles actually did any damage. They didn't even hit Israeli territory. So this is really one humiliation after another. I mean, Iran is a big country and he wants to be a regional player, but it just isn't really up to par. I mean, there may well be all sorts of reasons for it. But, if you want to be in that, play with the big boys, Russia, China, America, and so on, Iran at the moment is just looking rather as a joke. And I'm sure Iran will retaliate, but it's hard to believe that it's going to be any more effective than what happened in April of this year.